We are your landlords, flooding out and tapping out so that you don't have to with the occasional screw. My name is Graham. I go by Hamhocks42 on the internet, and I am joined, of course, as always, by the one and only Astralsflame. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, bud. I'm doing good. It's been a few weeks, maybe a month.
Something like
Travel
that.
travel is awkward, but that's okay.
Travel is awkward. Yes.
Like we're back in. We're sitting down. Things are happening again. The landlords are here with a new listing. Before we get into that though, Ham, how you doing, bud? How you been? What's new in the life?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I've been very busy as of late, but I gotta say, we've been ramping up the streams and my YouTube production, and it's feeling really good. So could not be happier with that. Yeah, and I'm excited to get into the discussion today because the internet has been a buzz as of the last, definitely the last week, if not the last 2 or 3 weeks, all about an upcoming ban announcement in
Yeah.
standard. And yeah, we're gonna be discussing kind of that and some of the meta discussion around it. But yeah, how about you, man? What's new with you, and how are things going?
It's been crazy. I'm trying to amp up the stream. I'm working on that push for partner. We're getting closer every day. It's really feeling like less than 2 months, and I'm
Nice.
scared and worried and happy. So we'll see. Yeah.
You got this.
But
You got this.
I'm fingers crossed I'm getting there. And I've got some cosplay conventions coming up. I got some sweet stuff rolling in. And I'm just happy to talk about how amazing the standard meta is right now and how greedy it is, especially after the game. We literally just saw you play. So Ham and I are sitting
Yes.
down for like pretext here. Like Ham's in a best of three. We're just chatting along. And let me tell you, the new Mardu mill deck in standard right now is fantastic. I don't think you could
Good.
mill any more efficient than that.
Oh man. No, it's silly. So yeah, for context, so what happened is that we were planning on recording, but like I knew we were gonna be a little bit, so I started up a game. And then Astros reached out and was like, all right, I'm ready to go. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going into like game 2 of this best of 3 match. I'll just hop on the phone and it's like, I'll share my screen while we're doing, because why not, right? And so yeah, and so we were just kind of chatting as I was playing through the game, and it was just ridiculous. And both games, so I went 2-0 in that match, and both games I won by Breach the Multiverse milling them out. And it was insane. Like the deck is not designed to be a mill deck, but it absolutely works. The idea of Breach the Multiverse hitting 10 cards, and in that particular instance, I was playing it and the opponent was playing it. And so when you breach from Atali into Atraxa, they're drawing a million cards, which is only helping me mill them. And we're, and both of us were always drawing into or free casting the answers to the other big creatures. So none of the Atraxas or Atalis were really getting into meaningful combat scenarios. And so it just ended up being this weird war of attrition where both decks ended up milling out, but my opponent had to draw their card first, and that was that. It's actually absolutely ridiculous, and that is a playstyle. And that's not a unique situation. I wouldn't be surprised if, you at home listening to this right now, or wherever you are, I shouldn't assume. I wouldn't be surprised if you've seen a match similar to this, either like on another stream or if you haven't experienced it yourself. It's wild what's going on right now in standard. It's very weird.
It is. Like, I can't remember. We were mentioning this in the last 2 years. I had said, I cannot remember meta where I have seen so many top heavy bomb impact cards stuffed into decks to define a game. Like, you asked me 2 years ago we were sitting at, I would tell you, well, maybe play a one of Titan of Industry in the sideboard in your deck because it's useful, and if you can copy it with Kiki Jiki, well, Kiki Jiki's broken, but anyways, you know,
Yeah.
that was it. You played 4 to 5 drops. Now we're at the
Mhm.
hey, let me just cast a 7-drop, Breach the Multiverse. I'll twiddle my thumbs a little bit here. We'll exile some cards, and then I'll repeat the process 5, 6 times, and then the game will end. And then yeah, good game, and shake hands. And it's a
It was
greedy meta.
It's a super greedy meta. And it's funny too, like I've done some stuff with like the new Nissa and Titan of Industry with the thought of like, oh man, if I can cast Titan like 2 or 3 times in a game, I'm gonna have so much value. My opponent's not gonna be able to keep up. And the truth is, that is laughable. It's like, oh, how quaint. You're playing Titan. That's cute. Like it does not hang with the new stuff that's going on. If you're doing crazy 7 drops, like there seems to be this general opinion that if a card costs at least 7 mana, it needs to like win you the game.
Yeah.
And Wizards, like their design team seems to have adopted that philosophy, and as a result, the 7 drops are worth like one 7-drop at this point is worth like 5 or 6 3-drops. It's insane. The sheer
Hugely.
amount of value you get once you get to that level. It's wild. I mean, Atali, for an example, it's a 7/7 trampler for 7. There's a time when that alone would have been a good playable rare that could win you a game.
Hugely.
But it has this enter the battlefield trigger where it just plays the top spell off both libraries,
Yeah.
no matter what they are. And so because it can free cascade with no mana limit from either player, you're encouraged to have incredibly large spells in your deck. And as a result, too, if you're going up against somebody doing something similar, they have big spells in their deck, and you end up in this situation where you throw one 7-drop, and you can get 20 plus mana worth of value just on one go. And then if you reanimate it for like 4 or 5, holy cow! Like it gets so huge so fast. It's absolutely absurd.
Like
Yeah.
we talk about mana cheating. I think this is probably the biggest mana cheating meta we've been in. I
Mhm.
can't even remember the last time. I guess fires would maybe be somewhat comparable. Like you're paying a 4 mana spell, getting up to 10, 12 mana free of a turn. But no, we are in a state right now on turn 5. Someone is casting 30 mana worth of spell.
Yep.
And I really think you hit it the nail on the head on this one. 7 drops define the game right now. And that's actually a philosophy I used to see back in my Hearthstone days. We had on the upper echelons of mana cost, we had how you could tell if something for what it was. Like if it was spoiler season, for example, and they
Mhm.
showcased a card but didn't say the mana cost, it was like, this card does this. We actually had a decent way to guess how good of a card was because of what it did. 7 drops, for example, in Hearthstone were fire. You had a 7-drop 7/7 that when it came into play made 7/1/1s, and when those 1/1s died, they dealt 1 damage to any target.
Ooh,
An
okay.
8-drop might have some random initial effect. It could deal 8 damage to a random target at end of turn.
Mm.
Your 9 drops were like, okay, this is cute and funny. It tutored something or it got something out of your deck. It did something. And then 10 drops were, all right, it's either great or it's gonna flop. But it was like fire, kind of random, tutor thing, and then who knows what. But 7 drops was, if you had a 7 drop, you were loving that 7 drop. Like
Nice.
it's crazy to me. Like it feels like that kind of time frame. And I mean, I'm all for free stuff. Like, but like 7 mana to get like 30 mana worth of free
Mhm.
things. When is
Yeah.
too much too much? Is there too much greed? I guess is the way.
That's a great way to put it. Honestly, it's funny. So we're talking about Atali. Atali's like the key example of just truly busted bananas nonsense, right? And there's no question, it absolutely is insane. And if your deck is designed to abuse it, it can get out of hand really fast. Atraxa is very much the same way, just incredibly nuts, super powerful. By the way, though, everybody just putting it out there, Elishnorn, Mother of Machines, shuts down both of those. So if you are running white in your deck and you don't have Norn Mama in your sideboard, think about it. Anyway, because that's been the mirror breaker for me. Elishnorn in the sideboard, oh boy.
Hmm.
But anyway, I digress. In the current card pool, we literally have a 12/12 trampling dinosaur at 7 with an attack trigger, and she doesn't even need to be the one attacking to get it. That is just insane value upside. And that was the bundle box promo. Like, that is bargain jank compared to what we have going on right now. That is insane. Like 12/12 for 7. There was a time when 12/12 printed on a card, like the original Galta being
Yeah.
12/12 was like 9. There was a cost reduction, but you had to have already set up a good board state. Otherwise, it's going to cost you 9 freaking mana. Like, it was a big deal. And that's just
Yeah.
par for the course now. That's just what you get. Like,
Yeah.
it honestly, it really it blows my mind how out of hand things are. But at the end of the day, that's the kind of power creep that I kind of like.
I'm for that as well. It's good
Yeah.
power creep, right? Like it's power creep in a design space because that is the evolution of the Magic philosophy. Way back in the day, creatures were bad, spells were good. That
Yep.
was the name of the game. And now spells are okay. No, we play our
Yeah,
efficient removals, but creatures,
sure.
that's the meta. That's the breaker. Like, it's interesting to see how that evolution of how crazy spells would be back then as to
Hmm.
how creatures are now. Like trained org, you know, 7 mana 6/6 in red. You would think that thing was great because red creatures
Let's
back
go.
then, for context, red often had the mechanic that this creature could not attack or block alone.
Hmm.
Especially in the org tribe, they would be you'd get like a 3 mana 4/4, which was like crazy value, but again, could not attack or block by itself. But then they threw at you the 7 mana 6/6. No other keywords. It was a rare. It's a 7 mana 6/6. But it was the trained org, and you were just like, oh my goodness, red has a 7 mana 6/6 that I can go attacking with. Best thing ever. Right?
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah, well, we're at a point right now where if a certain creature's on the board, you're like, crap, I need to answer this immediately. Yeah, there was a time when like just a 6/6, like a vanilla 6/6, it's like, oh man, that thing's gonna dominate. Like I need to do something about it. Because even like when we look at it now, it's like, oh, I can just put a little 1/1, I don't care in front of it all day. Because we have a ton of little 1/1s lying around and token generators everywhere. You know, they're very cheap and very easy to get now. So a 6/6 without trample in today's world, it's not like actually it's just not really a particularly meaningful body on the board. It just isn't. You know, you need trample once you get to a decent size or some kind of evasion. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
Um, whereas, yeah, back in the day, that was enough because like knowing I'm going to attack you every turn, and if you block, I am going to this attack is going to kill one of your creatures, which is likely one of your cards. You know, like it's funny the token generators back in the day were also really lousy. Like there was a card called the Hive, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was
Yes.
from like Legends or Antiquities. It was one of those
Yeah.
where it's like a 5 drop, and then you have to like pay 3, and you get like a 1/1 with flying. It's like awesome. This was totally worth it. It's like it's awful. I'm sure that wasn't exactly what it is, but it's like an 8 or 9 mana investment to get a 1/1. It's awful. It's the worst thing. But you can do it over and over again, which at the time was massive. I know. Compare that to like Retrofit or Foundry or something like that. Now you're just like,
Yeah.
what is
Or
this?
wedding announcement.
Winning it up,
You
yes.
don't have to do anything. You just play the
Yeah.
enchantment, you get the 1/1.
You just get a chump blocker every turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, until it's a glorious anthem. It's wild. It's yeah. So yeah, we have power creep. There's no question about it. And it's funny too because prior to Atali and Atraxa showing up into the format, actually I think it was prior to Atali. Like
Mhm.
Atraxa was around, and some people were leveraging her, but she seems to have really taken off since Mom showed up.
Yeah.
People seem to have really locked on with Breach the Multiverse and Atali showing up. All of a sudden, like Atraxa has really found a home in more competitive lists. At least that seems to be the case.
I totally agree.
Prior to this, it was all like 3 and 4 drop mid-range action. It was the wedding announcements, the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, with super efficient removal, Invoke Despairs, Bankbusters to create value. And the whole game was taking place at that section. Like that was the mid-range pile that we were seeing because we had Cut Down, we had Go for the Throat, Infernal Grasp, which is a phenomenal piece of removal for 2
Mhm.
that in most cases, like most decks don't even bother with it anymore because they're just better options. Which I think is kind of wild. But yeah, there are so many super efficient, super cheap uh, value engines at that point. That used to be the thing. And so the fact that we now have a way to go over the top of those decks and really, you know, have this weird battle cruiser finish to a game that we didn't have before, I really like that. That's an evolution of the format that I think is really cool, and I'm happy to see it. Because I was the guy doing Jund Reanimator with Titan and Fable months ago when everybody else was hitting Shielders and Invoke Despairs. That was just my jam. Because when there was a time when if you could get Fable and Titan down on like turn
won.
4, you just win. That was it. It was over. But now like yeah, like you were saying, it's just that doesn't happen. But yeah, so the question of is the change good? Like we both kind of agree that it is. Like I'm finding the gameplay much more fun now than I did a moment ago. Because everybody seems to be doing the same kind of stuff I like to do. So also it's kind of silly, but I am going to throw this out there. It almost feels like I have kind of a little bit of a home team advantage, which I'm sure you understand too.
Oh,
Because
completely.
it's like, oh, I've been trying this for years, and now everybody else is doing it too. Like, haha! Like I've had a little more practice than some other folks out
Yeah,
there, so
you
it's
know
fun.
the little niche, the things
Mhm.
to hedge you in advance. No,
Yeah,
100%
exactly.
I agree. Because
Yeah.
playing the strategies that haven't been as effective as they are now, you already know all the shortfalls that you need to overcome to make the deck completely functional.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try to like boast or anything on this, but like
No,
I
no.
love Ham's brews. Ham knows sometimes I take his brews, I tweak up a couple little cards. 'Cause I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to tweak this a little bit, take it on the ladder, a slightly different approach. I took his Mardu Reanimator slot machine deck. I changed up like 3 or 4 cards just to like
Mm-hmm.
change the direction, add an extra breach, go in that same way. But I pushed into top 800 mythic with that list. It's like,
Believe it, dude.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's one of those things though, like your ability to just take somebody's list and like punch it up and really take it to the next level is definitely meaningful. Like I feel like my strength as a brewer is identifying the cards that can help like put something
Yeah.
together. Like knowing that okay, Breach the Multiverse is our top end. Well, Crocs and Kunaros is a great piece alongside Breach the Multiverse
good.
because you get a free reanimator, you get 2 free bodies if you have that out of your graveyard, plus whatever you got from your opponent. And it's like, okay, if I'm going to be doing this, Liliana the Veil is all of a sudden great removal, but wait, that's going to be hurting my hand a little bit if it's correct. Well, that means I have a low hand, which means Jero and Hazaret could also potentially drop. And like seeing those synergies, like those are 2 cards that are key to the Mardu deck that you and I play.
Yep.
That
Absolutely.
like I felt proud to having identified that those fit the deck. But then you identifying, okay, you really need 3 of these rather than 2 of these, and really tuning it into something that can really like take it home and really drive it, drive home a more consistent win rate. That's huge. Like I love it. Yeah. No, that is definitely a meaningful skill.
Yeah, but so the point I was gonna tie in with it was
Yeah.
like it's playing in that reanimator game though. So like you've been playing the decks outside the meta. I've been playing the decks outside the meta. We've been approaching from different ways. This little skill set has really pushed it into where we can succeed in this meta, and just like that gameplay, that deck that a few months ago people made it's a random luck generator deck. No, Ham did not create a random luck generator deck. Ham created a masterpiece, and it is fantastic.
So right now, Jero and Hazaret is like a 15-cent card that nobody thinks is really meaningful.
Wait, 15 cents?
Yeah, honestly, straight up. You can order one right after. I made an order not too long ago for some singles, and I was like, let's throw a couple of those in there because like I think it's a great card in the right deck.
For sure.
Because if you have a critical mass of legendary creatures in your deck, with the moment Jero and Hazaret attacks, you just get to cast one of them without paying its mana cost. I think people just didn't read those last couple of words because it makes a big difference. A little bit. It's pretty good. And it even gets haste if you have only 1 or fewer cards in your hand. That's kind of what Hazaret's bringing to the table, right? So, yeah, the card is excellent. And that's a 5-drop that is not seeing a lot of play right now in Boros. And I think it's kind of wild because it's fantastic. And you can find these weird cases right now in Standard, in the card pool that exists because of how much weird free casting and how many cards provide card advantage in one way or another. Like one card that I've seen a lot recently, which I didn't see previously at all, is the like Copperhoof Vorak, the 3/3 for 3. I think it's the Copperhoof Vorak. It's something Vorak.
Oh, is that the one
Unless
that you search up a land or something?
Or no, it's Contagious Vorak. Copperhoof
Yeah,
Vorak, like the really really old one. Contagious Vorak is the one with it's a Vorak. I don't know. It's Mirrodin, man. Yeah, Contagious Vorak. That's the one.
Okay.
It's weird, but it's a 3/3 for 3, 2 and a green. Phyrexian Boar Beast. When it ETBs, look at the top 4 cards. You may reveal a land card from among them. Put it in your hand. And if you don't, if you don't put a land in your hand this way, because you could choose not to, or there won't be one. You just proliferate in that case. So the card is good value, and it replaces itself. So that's one of the things. Like if you need a 3-drop, it can replace itself in your hand with a land. Guarantees you get your 4th land drop. You get a 3/3 on board that can kind of tangle with like, the Fable tokens and things like that. Like that's a card that didn't see, like I didn't see any play before, but I've gone up against it a number of times now in these like weird domain lists that have kind of stepped up, leveraging Italian Atraxa and sometimes Breach the Multiverse, at these goofy top ends. And that right there is a common 3-drop that simply replaces itself in your hand. Because if your opponent then spends removal to kill it, or it trades in combat, your opponent is down a card, and you're not, effectively. Those kinds of effects are everywhere right now. Like a card that simply replaces itself is playable. And it gives you some value. It's one of the things I've heard too. Like I've heard people like, why is Atraxa so good? She dies to go for the throat. She's a 7-drop, 4 colors, dies to go for the throat. It's like, yeah, but the 5 cards I just drew don't. Like,
That is one of my favorite arguments for how good a creature is, and I mean I'm guilty of
Yeah,
using that argument too,
sure,
and like
sure.
it is a valid argument, but it still laughs. I will laugh at both sides, like,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
dies
And
to
as a reanimator,
removal.
honestly, as a reanimator player, I love that. It's like you're gonna
Yeah,
put it back in my graveyard so I can spin it again with the reanimation spell she just drew me. Sweet. Like, it's yeah, it's great. Like there's a fun situation going on in standard right now where the top end is super duper powerful in a way that can actually win games because it's card efficient. You know, there was a time when, like, yeah, you could go down 3 cards or whatever to get a Merit Lage on the battlefield. You have 20/20 flying indestructible. It's probably going to win you the game, but if it gets answered, like if your opponent has the Source to Plowshares, like, yeah, you gain a ton of life, but
but you
you
lose your
now have
critic.
nothing because you spent all your resources on the thing. You know,
Yeah.
whereas now it's like these huge top end threats are also giving me cards on top of everything else, and so they're playable in a competitive environment, and I think that's cool. Like I enjoy that very much. um but yeah,
And part of this is like a slight theory, but with all the stuff we have that is like producing value, replacing itself, it's almost like that conjure mechanic in alchemy.
I
Maybe
suppose.
alchemy was secretly a testing ground for us to have the standard we have now.
I mean, honestly, I think they are printing perpetually in paper.
They are.
They are. And anybody tries to claim otherwise is ignoring a lot of really meaningful, important cards.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's the new Elspeth, Archangel Elspeth. She like permanently turns a creature into an angel. That's not until end of turn. It just happens.
Yep.
But it's not a counter. You know, so it just gets the text and it just has that. Like even Sarah Paragon, when it brings something back from the graveyard, that thing now perpetually has the text. If it leaves, it goes to exile and you gain the life. You know, like those are just now perpetual effects that exist on cards. And to the point where people are even making like honestly, for a long time in my bag, whenever I would like go places with my cards, I would just keep post-it notes for things
Yeah.
like that. Although nowadays I've been using more infinite tokens just because they're great. But
Hashtag
they've
not
replaced it.
sponsored, but wannabe.
Yeah, not sponsored, but they're just great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The amount of earned media they get is excellent and well deserved. Because yeah. Anyway, yeah, the board states are getting super duper complicated. This is part of the deal now. And you're right. It's funny mentioning alchemy because yeah, there are some digital only mechanics that I mean, yeah, kind of exist in paper now.
They're there.
I mean, ultimately, what is a token if not a conjured permanent onto the battlefield?
That's
I mean,
what I'm saying.
and that's been there like since Jump. I mean,
Yeah.
like tokens have existed in the game forever.
And now we have transforming tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Cards produce things out of exile. They've replaced themselves. They get permanent card text.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
I think
Standard's greedy
God's
now.
looking at
Wait until we have alchemy fully into standard.
Oh my goodness. That is interesting though. That is interesting. It kind of dovetails into another talking point that since we're talking standard, I think it'd be remiss if we didn't bring up.
Absolutely.
Because this wasn't the case the last time we got together. Wizards did announce that they're changing the way standard rotates now.
Mm-hmm.
So standard is going to continue rotating every year, except this year, to get onto the new schedule where cards will be legal for up to 3 years in standard instead of up to 2.
Three more years.
Three more years, exactly. So all the cards that would have rotated this year are instead going to rotate next year, and then all the cards that would have rotated next year are going to rotate the year after that. So we're going to have Sheoldred the Apocalypse in standard until 2025 now.
2 more years.
So hooray! Yeah, unless of course Sheoldred ends up eating a ban at some point, which we'll see. But that's maybe another topic for in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
but
so ban announcement's only three days away.
Yeah, there's a new ban announcement coming up in 3 days as of this recording. By the time you're listening to this, you may already know what's on it, and maybe we'll sound silly, but we don't know as of this recording what is on that ban announcement. There's been a lot of conjecture, a lot of discussion around it over the last few days, because it's going to make a big difference. Whatever gets hit, it is going to make a difference. I'm sure of it. Wizards has confirmed that something is going to get banned in standard. Something. We don't know how many cards. We don't know exactly what. I mean, pretty much the community has kind of made a consensus of like one card in like there are two that most people are thinking are on the chopping block. I'm pretty sure there are. We'll see. I hope there are a couple more, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But now with standard rotating, the standard rotation being longer, this is their stated goal was to make standard more of a safe investment in paper, which I guess makes some sense because if I'm going to spend a couple $100 on a deck, knowing that it's going to effectively expire in a year, at which time the cards that are in it will reduce in value dramatically because people can't play them outside of like Commander and whatnot. Then older formats. I mean, I'm sure some of them see modern play and things of that nature, but for the most part, like if you have a standard deck, it's a standard deck. These are standard cards. There's a good chance that their value is going to drop dramatically upon rotation. So yeah, I can spend $500 on a standard deck, which actually might be a conservative estimate these days, which is kind of nuts.
Thereabouts, yeah. Like it's really surprising. I'm not gonna go into the card. Like we could talk for hours on card prices, but it's interesting.
Yeah, finance is something. Yeah. But yeah, if I spend $500 on a standard deck, if I completely liquidate it after it rotates out, I'll be lucky if I get $100 back off of it. I'd imagine.
Unless you're playing 4 copies of She-Holder the Apocalypse.
That's fair, because that card is going to be. Yeah, that's the thing. Do the cards have value in Commander? If your current standard cards have value in Commander, they will probably retain a decent chunk of value. And She-Holder is a good example of a card that punishes you for basically playing the game. And there will always be players in Commander who want that effect, guaranteed. You know, so you're right. Yeah, that one is going to be valuable in Commander, and it's going to probably retain its value even after it rotates to some degree. There might be a little bit, but it'll still be worth quite a bit, especially if you have the fancy ones. But yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting. I have so many thoughts and so many places I want to go with this that my brain is like seizing up, like overload. What do we say next? Because the bans are going to shake things up in one way or another. The rotation is now extended, so the play style. There are certain cards that are not going to get hit by this ban that we are going to have for a really long time. And Wizards has said they only want to ban stuff once a year. They're going to give themselves open season to ban stuff once per year, but that's it. Otherwise. Their stated goal is they want it to be a safe investment. They want you to be able to buy in paper so that local game stores can have standard events fire again because of a community that's interested in actually playing standard in those spaces. Because apparently right now this is not a thing.
Yeah, it's really not. Standard in many places exist. Anyway.
Yeah, like paper standard just isn't prevalent outside of like the Pro Tour.
That's pretty much
so. Yeah, which is kind of a shame, definitely. But at the same time, I honestly don't know how important that is because clearly the last 2 years were kind of or last 3 years or so were kind of an anomaly, like just in the world, of course. Yeah. But Wizards had record profits without a paper scene outside of, Spell Table Commander.
Well, like I mean, like any people that were invested in Magic the Gathering stock as us two fine fellows here, clearly, I think we did okay. By our totally non-green screened condos in the
as you can see, yes, clearly
modest living.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how important as far as like Wizards profits are concerned, which I'm sure is the ultimate bottom line because it always is. They're a company in a capitalist nation. It is what it is. I'm like whether or not that's an okay thing. That's a whole other topic that's for another day. But. But it is the case. I love when people are like, they just make money. It's like, yes, they are. What was your point with that?
It's company.
Yeah, there's a business. That's their whole thing. That's the reason they keep making Magic cards and have for 30 years. That's the reason. Anyway, and that's ultimately what's going to drive this. And it seems, I don't know that it's necessary as far as the bottom line is concerned. I don't understand why you would push this at a time when the arena scene has become so vibrant. I guess I don't know play numbers, so I don't know what's going on the back end. But I know, like, from the streaming perspective and being plugged into that community, like there aren't as many events as there used to be, but the ones that exist are popping. And we're not. Yeah, there's so many people that are interested and invested in Arena as a competitive outlet. And like the Arena Championships, from what I understand, are like doing gangbusters. Whenever they do the Arena Opens on the weekends, those things are just absolutely jam-packed. Nobody's struggling to find games. Like, it looks to me like Arena is doing great. And this change is going to ultimately hurt Arena players, because we now have this stagnant meta potentially, because the rotation is happening less and less frequently, or at least the rotation is having a smaller impact on the meta. That's going to, I believe, negatively impact the experience of playing on Arena, because we're going to be getting into these same Z games and the same decks are going to show up over and over again longer. That was one of the nice things about, and honestly, on Arena, you play so many games. We were already at a point where, leading up to there was one year, the year when Eldraine was legal and was going to be rotating.
Rotation came early.
They did a rotation early where they opened
that.
a queue. They opened the like standard 2021 queue, where it was like 3 months before rotation, and they were just like, well, what if everything rotated anyway? Here you go.
That was
and they gave it to us as its own unique queue. And frankly, that was super fun. We had a ton of fun in that queue. It was great. It was awesome. Yeah, when Faceless Haven got like preemptively banned because of the people using Book of Exalted Deeds before they printed a Field of Ruin back into Standard. Oh my goodness, it was great. Yep, there was no land destruction. There was nothing you could do about it. It was wild.
What a time. Oh.
It was quite the time, yes. Now I'm gonna put this divinity counter on my Faceless Haven, and then pass the turn. It's not a creature. No. And I sit here and look at you for the next hour. Awesome. Anyway. Yeah, but yeah, they gave rotation early because they knew, like, this format, this standard, people are not enjoying it. This is a problem. We need to be done with this now. And
yeah,
the truth is that happens every single year in standard. One of the appeal of standard, in my opinion, is that it is constantly changing. And as an Arena player, standard is the perfect format for that client, because I can invest a decent chunk of money and a good chunk of my time, which I was going to do anyway. And I can now play a ton of different decks in Standard. Like, my Standard collection has been almost complete for the last couple of months. Don't ask me how much that cost. I don't want to discuss it. That's not a flex. But as a result, I can play whatever deck I want. You know, and that helps my content, because we're doing different weird brews all the time, like every day. And it's a ton of fun, and it's a great way to experience Standard. And rotation adds spice to that, and it's delightful to see, like, okay, what cards were people not using previously, but now some of the answers for them have rotated out, that maybe they can step up and shine in a way that they couldn't before. You know, that happens all the time, and it's always a blast to see. Or what new cards have come in and all of a sudden made a huge shakeup and changed things, which happened this last year with rotation. Yeah, when the rotation hit in September, Sheoldred the Apocalypse was introduced. And that was, like, it's funny, people talk about how a ton of people apparently thought Sheoldred was going to be rotating this year, because it feels like we've been playing against her for so long. But it's just that she was like a 4 of playable since day one. Yeah. You know, she just was. And so as a result, she got adopted super fast and became a very notable presence in the meta immediately. But things like that, it's funny, like, when people are talking about the bans, a lot of the time they talk about cards from Innistrad, or especially Kamigawa, that they're just sick of seeing. Yeah. And it's not even necessarily that they're problematic. Like, I hear people say they're just tired of them. Like, that's it. I'm just tired of seeing it. You know, it's like, honestly, like, I really don't want to see wedding announcement anymore.
I can do with that.
I'm ready to be done with wedding announcement. It is currently in like 10% of decks as like a 2 or 3 of. It does not have a problematic win rate. It does not have a problematic adoption rate. It has even fallen out of favor. But I've been seeing the thing for 2 freaking years. I'm ready for a change. Yeah. And I've heard people say that same thing about Farewell. Like, it has a certain play pattern and a certain experience, and I just don't like it. And it's like, that's fine. You're entitled to not like that card. Like, you're welcome to your feelings. Everyone's feelings are valid when it comes to stuff like this. But it's in like 5% of decks, and like, it even has, like, I looked at one of the stats. It actually has a losing win percentage if it's in a hand you kept. You know, like, it's not, which kind of makes sense because you don't want it in your open hand.
You don't want a 6-drop in your hand. That's fair. I mean, unless you're a Reanimator, but no, that's fair. That's
yeah. So it's one of those where it's like, it's not like, I understand the play pattern isn't fun, but I would not call it a problematic card. You know, it's one of those where a couple of decks can use it strategically to stay on board in a way that maybe they, you know, and claw back from a losing position. So folks who really enjoy those kind of controlling games, like, definitely want to hang on to it and don't want it to go anywhere. And I get that. But people who hate getting completely blown out when they would have had the win the next turn, Okay, I get that too. Like I've been hit by it plenty of times and I've rolled my eyes and been frustrated, of course. But yeah, it's not a problematic card, so it doesn't deserve to be banned. But rotation would have removed it.
Yeah.
and
I like
and it would have just we
it
wouldn't
would
have
have
had to
fixed
deal
it
with it anymore.
for sure.
You know?
To me, like a problematic card, if I was to find one, I'm gonna stick away from mentioning, Bankbuster Fable. That's a dead and done card.
We all know. Yep.
Blood Tithe Harvester.
Mm-hmm.
I'll touch on that. That's the card
Yeah.
that would have rotated this September. That is one of the most efficient 2-drops you could have in a meta. It is a
Mhm.
upstatted body and is removable, and it gives you a filtering outlet for your hand. For 2 mana at uncommon.
Yep.
And that's been in any deck if it plays black and red,
Mm-hmm.
as a 4 in there because it's just good. One of those cards that to me is like a problematic card. I play it, it's good. I'll die on that hill yet, but
You
it's
like winning
problematic.
games. Of course you play it.
Of course. But that's a problematic card.
Mm-hmm.
And like rotation would fix that. Honestly, on Monday, I won't be surprised if Blood Tithe Harvester gets the axe.
I won't be surprised. I will be surprised if it does, but I
Yeah.
won't disagree if it does. It's one of those things where I think it's problematic, but I think part of the reason it is especially problematic is the support pieces around it really take it up to 11. You're right that the card is busted. It totally is.
Mhm.
But once you add it alongside Fable,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you have repeatable removal for the rest of the game. Every single turn you get to kill your opponent's
fair.
things, and as that goes on, you get all these blood tokens lying around, which can supercharge other effects. If anything cares about artifacts on the field, you got tons of those. You can kill really huge things once you get 5 or 6, blood on the field. Like that becomes really powerful. The other thing that you can do in the early game, if you do turn 2 Bankbuster, turn 3 Harvester, you now have 1 mana that you can use to filter your hand with the blood, crew the Bankbuster, punch your opponent for 4. Like, the amount of value you get on that turn is disgusting. You should not be able to swing for 4 with upside on turn 3. That is ridiculous, and you can absolutely do it right now. Like, yeah, it's not hard. Like, it happens all the time. And, Blood Tithe Harvester being just so efficient and so busted at that 2-drop slot, like, enables those setups. So yeah, it is an incredibly powerful card. If Fable and Bankbuster get banned though, it is still an incredibly powerful card. But a lot of the really like unfair dumb stuff that it really enables suddenly become less viable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still a good piece if you're doing like Oni Called Anvil stuff, or if you're doing any kind of any reanimator stuff. It's a good thing to have, because if you can put a 3-power creature back on defense with a blood token to help put your Atraxa in your graveyard, great. Like you're doing the thing. So yeah, on some degree it actually might even become more important once Fable's gone. But if that was on the list, I wouldn't be mad, honestly.
No, I wouldn't either. To me that would be
Yeah.
like when we had Divide by Zero banned.
Yeah,
I was fine to see that go.
I celebrated when Divided by Zero got banned, because going into it,
corks
I
were
was like,
popped.
we need to get rid of Alrund's Epiphany and Divide by Zero. And so many people were like, not Hullbreaker, not Lear. Why are you like, what is about to Divide by Zero? It's like, trust me, that thing holds the entire deck together.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
Wizards was like, let's get rid of that. It's like, thank you. All right.
A+.
Because it was a 3-mana Time Walk that drew you a meaningful card.
Yeah.
Like,
Whatever
I'm
you
going to
need.
try to play a 4-drop. Like, well, no, I'm going to shove it back in your hand, draw this Environmental Sciences, or, Mascot Exhibition if it's in the late game. Well, whatever the case may be, whatever I need in my hand, basically. Yeah. And, like, I just completely undid your turn, and I'm now ahead. Like, sweet, this is fun. Yeah, it was miserable. Like, Divide by Zero was incredibly powerful, and it's a fair comparison, because it itself doesn't feel like a huge blowout, but it absolutely is. Yeah.
It's like She-Holdred. Doesn't feel like it after.
Yeah, about that. Well, that's the space where I feel like Bankbuster is.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like competitive players and people who are really serious about it realize, like, it's like a 4-for-1 on a body that can go into any deck whatsoever. Like, if it's aggro strategies, if it's mid-range strategies, in control, it gives you card advantage when otherwise you wouldn't be able to have it. Like, the card is phenomenal, but all it's really doing is drawing you a couple of cards. So it's easy as a player to look at it and be like, I don't know, that card isn't the thing that's killing me, so I don't really care too much about it. Whereas the Invoke Despair, like, is literally lethal half the time it hits.
But they
so
wouldn't
that's
have
the thing I
drawn
hate.
it, though, without the Bankbuster.
Exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, that's exactly right.
That's it, though.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Well, and we're also in a standard right now where Liliana the Veil is present, and she's not that
She's
great.
not even played.
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Bankbuster blanks her completely.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a situation where, like, and I've gone up against Bankbuster with Lily in my deck so many times, because what ends up happening is your opponent will play out a creature, like they'll have Bankbuster on 2, play out a creature on 3, maybe Graveyard Trespass or whatever.
Mhm.
You drop Liliana down tick, kill their creature. They now have no creatures in theory, but their Bankbuster sitting back there. They now then play another creature, whether it's another 3-drop, 4-drop, whatever. Crew the Bankbuster, boom, Lily's dead now. You know, just because Bankbuster was there. And if you're forcing your opponent to be discarding cards, which is one of the other big advantages that Lily provides, the Bankbuster draws you cards to offset that. Like, it's funny. That card completely blanks what was an incredibly powerful modern staple for years.
Yeah.
And like, to the point where everybody was like, is this too good for standard? This is nuts. And she's not even worth considering nowadays.
No, she's like a $15 card right now, which is, great. Like, it's
Yeah.
happy to see. But
yeah, I'm not saying cards should be expensive, but yeah, exactly. It's one of those where it's like, how? There was a time when she was like the $60 bomb that people were losing their mind over.
Here's a question I'm
It's-
going to propose.
yeah.
So, to kind of wrap in our discussion of the greedy standard,
Yeah.
do you think standard is still going to be greedy after the bans on Monday? I know we don't know what's being banned and everything, but
Mhm.
do you think we'll still be in a greedy standard?
After this upcoming ban announcement on Monday, I anticipate we will, unless Atraxa gets hit, but I highly doubt she will.
I'm in
I
that
don't.
same boat.
I think Atraxa is too new, so I don't think they would ban Atraxa at this point. So what I think is going to happen is we're probably going to lose some of the core mid-range pieces that we've had. So I think we're definitely going to lose Fable and Bankbuster. I would put money down that those two are going.
I
and I don't
would
think
agree with
anyone
that.
would take me up on it. Yeah. And we may, like, they may hit Invoke. They may hit Sheldred, but even that I highly doubt. I think both of those cards are like considered for like future bannings, but I don't know if they're gonna get hit on this one. Invoke maybe, whatever the case may be. The Rakdos deck is definitely gonna get hit. There's no question about
it has to.
It has to. And I think without Fable tying in a lot of these greedy strategies, it is gonna slow down a little until people learn how to adapt.
Mhm.
But honestly, I think the fact that all of the big creatures that are like the greedy top end of those super greed pile decks, all of those have ETBs. There are ways to stymie ETBs. You know, you can counter the creature on the stack, so the mono blue list is gonna possibly step up and really become more powerful. You know, like a friggin' Scatter Ray gets rid of Atraxa very cleanly for 2 mana. So we might see things like that really rising to prominence. We also then have, you know, we mentioned Elishnorn, Brother of Machines. She cleanly stops these kinds of strategies from really popping off unless she's answered.
Mhm.
And I think people might adjust and put her into more sideboards, if not straight up main decks, depending on how greedy people are out there getting. And I think the meta will evolve even without bans once these core value pieces that are like guaranteed 3-for-1s at super cheap spaces, once those have been removed, then all of a sudden we're going to get to a space where the power level is going to be a little more even and people are going to adjust over time. Like we've seen it time and time again.
We do.
Where a meta will be completely different month after month, just because people have identified the best decks in the formats, identified the ways to beat the best decks in the formats, and then the people playing those decks shift to something else to answer. Yeah, to answer the other deck. I mean, the best example of this was in the previous, like, I don't know, 2 standards ago, however you mark those, with the Naya Runes list. That deck was fascinating. I loved it because we would go one event and Naya Runes would be untouchable. It would be completely dominant. Then you go to the next event and you would have these huge pros who are phenomenal players, like unquestioned masters of the game, bringing Naya Runes and get completely trounced, like they had no business being there, and would get completely demolished because people had figured out how to tech against it and stop it. And then those decks that were stopping it became popular, and so the Naya Runes list fell out of favor. And then those decks shifted because the hosers that they put in the decks to deal with Naya Runes weren't as effective against what they were now facing.
Mm-hmm.
And then once those hosers were gone, Naya Runes was like, haha, I'm back. It was never went anywhere, baby. And that was a situation where for over 6 months, that deck came and went like 2 or 3 times with no bans and like 1 additional set or something like that. Like maybe 2 that like didn't really like cause a big shakeup in that meta. It was wild, like to watch. And that's where standard should be. We should be at a point where multiple strategies are viable because everything is of relatively even power level and they can check each other. And so as people are jockeying for that edge against the other decks, the preferences shift and the styles shift and everything flows naturally. Right now, what we have is in the last like 7-8 months, Rakdos and Grixis have been so strong with the core of Bloodtithe Harvester, Reckoner Bankbuster, and Fable of the Mirror Breaker with Sheoldred at the 4-drop slot. Those cards have been integral to a powerful mid-range plan that frankly is so generically strong, nothing else can really keep up.
Yeah, it just does its job. It's just good.
Yeah, it just shows up and it's just good. And it just, no matter what your opponent answers, the next thing is going to win the game somehow. You can put those pieces together in any combination, and you're going to have a deck that is very strong and can win games. And it's really tough to answer. Like there are very few really strong answers to all of those pieces all at once. And so that deck has been super popular and competitively very strong for a really long time. And honestly, the 5-color like domain greed piles are one of the few things that have kind of like usurped it over the last few weeks as far as like play rates and win rates on the ladder goes. And I'm kind of shocked to see that really step up and become more popular even prior to the bans.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens because that deck is like way too new to be deemed problematic, in my opinion.
I would absolutely agree.
Yeah, like the rest of the field hasn't had an opportunity to adjust to it yet. So yeah, I don't know. Like the bans are definitely going to take some of the core out of that deck because I think that is holding a lot of other archetypes down. Like especially control. Think about it. Like when was the last like dedicated actual not messing around control deck that we had that was competitively viable? Like you see people out there running like some variants of Esper control or some variants of like the mono white deck, which is pretty controlling. But even then,
they're fringe control.
They're very fringe. Yeah. Like the good old Azorius, like, 1-for-1 counter, bounce. Like Soul Partition is a great example of a card that I'm seeing a lot of people using nowadays that honestly, with some of those bigger, scarier decks, like if you hit a 7-drop with it, you're probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like that's effectively removable. Or if you hit a token. But otherwise, like if you hit a generic 2 or 3-drop with it, like there was a time when that would have been a very powerful play.
Usually.
And in a lot of cases now it's just not really. I don't know. So a classic control list is something that we don't currently have in the competitive meta. And I don't know. I've seen people trying it. I've seen people trying to make it work. But when your opponent's getting 3 cards worth of value off every one card,
you can't keep up.
You can't 1-for-1 removal and win. You just can't. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the bans shake out. But yeah, I think the super greed piles are probably not going anywhere, but they are going to become easier to check because people can worry about them instead of solely focusing on how to beat Rakdos. Like right now, with every single deck you build, you have to have an answer to Rakdos. If you don't, you're just gonna get blown out and left behind.
Period. It's that core shell. You need to answer those 4 cards that we've set: Harvester, Fable, Shelly, Invoke. Answer one of those 4. If you don't answer any of them and it goes Harvester, Fable, Shelly, Invoke, guarantee you lose the game. Guarantee.
You're done. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Because that's the thing with the Harvester, you have to remove the Harvester immediately. They still have the blood token. If you remove if they drop the Fable, you have to remove the Shaman immediately. Otherwise, it's going to ramp them up. In which case, they still have the Fable. That's going to be flipping into Kiki-Jiki eventually. With Sheoldred, it's funny, though. Of all of the ones we just mentioned, Sheoldred is, like, the most fair. But the problem is, you had to deal with all that other crap first. So by the time Sheoldred shows up, removing her is going to be a lot harder because you've used your removal already. And then Invoke is just a guaranteed 3-for-1 no matter what.
Yeah, either way. It's either draw 3 or make your opponent lose 3. Like, there is no middle ground on Invoke. No. It always hurts.
No, it's nuts. It's a single card that you spend and you get 3 cards worth of value every time. And it can directly kill your opponent.
Yeah. 100%.
Like if you're in a situation where you can like copy that with like a Chandra Hope's Beacon or something, which is like talk about greed piles, but that's that's super greed, but I've had it happen.
That's huge greed.
I've gotten hit by it. Like you see two invokes on the stack targeting you.
Sorry.
Ouch. Yeah. You're good. You're good.
Just
No, it's all
tonight.
good. No
But
worries.
yeah.
But yeah, so it's one of those things where it'll be very interesting to see how things shake out post bans, depending on what gets hit.
Hugely.
And I do think you get Fable and Bankbuster out of the mix, and then all of a sudden, super cheap, efficient 3-for-1s become much harder to pull off. And that's actually why also I think Wedding Announcement should be in the mix for consideration. Not
I
just because
agree.
I'm bored of seeing it, but it is that type of card. It is a 3-drop that can get you multiple cards and multiple cards worth of value over the course of the game if left
Huge.
unanswered.
And I'll agree with that 100%. If we look at the meta before Fable was in, Wedding Announcement was in every 3-drop deck. You
It was the
splashed
thing.
white. It was just the thing. Fable's gone. Wedding does. I think if Fable goes, a Wedding should go.
I'm kind of agree. They fill a similar niche, and I think the Wedding Announcement's fallen out of favor because the Rakdos list is so good, and Corpse Appraiser is good enough to merit splashing blue, but splashing for a 4th color and still hitting Invoke on time is going to be almost impossible. So even with the mana bases we have now, I know mana bases right now are really good, but yeah, so like sometimes splashing into blue is manageable and decent and worth it sometimes. But even then, the Rakdos list, like that's even fallen out of favor, it seems. Like people seem to be focusing more on just dialing in the Rakdos package and not even worrying about blue at all.
You don't play anything else. You just now play Rakdos. It's been of late, I do think it's been Rakdos, and then the new Calyx has been gaining a lot of favor in enchantment decks, really pushing it. But that's a story for a whole other greedy day.
Yeah. That's a fun greed pile too. Yeah, Calyx is a really fun card. Bards of the Machine or Aftermath rather, did bring a couple of cool build arounds, Calyx being like chief among them. Yeah.
Bam. Yeah. Viewers, what do you think? Has a greedy standard been good? Has it been bad? Are we gonna get even greedier in the bans? Let us know in the comments down below. But Ham, it's been a slice. Wait, no, that's not our slogan.
Wait, slicing has been cheesy. Yeah,
wait
a cheesy. Wait, what are we doing?
This is the wrong. Sorry, guys, wrong show.
What channel are we on? Yes.
Yeah, my dude, where can people find you for further listings?
Yes. So you can find me on Twitch and YouTube with the name Hamhocks42. I'm over on Twitch quite a bit these days. That's kind of my home on the internet. I'd love to see you over there. I also post random thoughts on Twitter from time to time. Yeah, so I'd love to see you over there. Hamhocks42 in all the places, because I put the awkward number to make sure I can get my name in all the places. It's nice. So Astrals, how about you, my friend? Where can they go to find you, and what can they find when they get there?
Yeah, y'all can find me at Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Astralsflame. I'm always jamming Gender Dragons, and as I always say, if you're not playing a dragon in a deck, what is going wrong in your mind space? Because you should. Whether it's Standard, Modern, Commander, Legacy, Vintage, or Pauper. Let that sink in for a moment. Yeah, but yeah, I'm always doing the Gender Dragon things. I'm working on the push for Parter on Twitch. We're getting closer each and every day, and I'm working on stabilizing that stream schedule for 4 days a week, so we get there in the next 2 months. But
yes, get the lurk on, everybody. It makes a huge difference.
I appreciate it.
You got it. It's funny, actually. It's funny you mentioned dragons. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this as a random aside. My dad is exactly the same way. Like he's shown me like, oh, I built this commander deck, and he'll show me it'll be like an elf commander deck. Yeah. I'm like, why is Jugan in this? It's like because I needed a dragon. Like.
See, your dad gets it. Your dad gets it. That's it.
He gets it. Yeah, he puts a dragon in every single one of his decks. Doesn't matter the format. There's at least a one dragon. No matter does it fit? Doesn't matter. Need a dragon.
Beautiful. That's all I can say. That's the mentality we need. That's what'll make Commander great again. Not that it isn't great, but
it's pretty great. But it could be greater.
Could be greater with dragons. Elder dragons. If you like Elder Dragons and Dragons, make sure to drop us a follow and get in on the actions. Get the heads up on our next listing. Because everyone, as always, we don't try to be greedy, but we're pretty greedy. And we'll continue to be greedy in this standard. So until then, we are your landlords.